Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Counterpoise podcast. We have a good topic for you today. I am one of your co-hosts, Samantha Adams, and I'm joined by my other two co-hosts. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
I'm one of your hosts, Everett Stevenson.
And I'm your last co-host, Malik Foster. And this week, we are addressing the recent shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and the police's response to the situation. So let's just jump right into it here. I think as everybody already knows about the recent shooting in Uvalde, Texas, where 21 people lost their lives, including 19 children and 2 teachers. It was a horrendous situation that happened. And we want to kind of get in depth with some of the things that happened and some of the recent information that has come out about it, especially the police's response and on how they handled the situation. So first, we kind of want to get into the gross negligence of the Uvalde Police Department and the other agencies as well, because it wasn't just the Uvalde Police Department and their operations that was grossly negligent for as well as some of the border patrol agents. So we're going to get into some details on that. Do y'all guys want to go ahead and jump in here and detail some of this stuff about how the Uvalde Police Department and other public safety officials were grossly negligent?
Yeah, sure. Let's be clear. Like I saw something and it said something like the police had arrived within like 4 minutes, which is an appropriate response time to any emergency. But then they stood around for like 43 minutes, I think it was, before anybody ever went in. And then I also read somewhere where it said that the FBI, the federal agents, decided to go in because the police weren't. There's some chatter about the police that did go in. They went in to save their own children and nobody else's kids, and that the police are the ones that have this type of response training to an active shooter at a school. The feds typically don't. I'm pretty sure they probably have some training, but not to the extent as the police. And the fact that the police stood around for that long, I don't know what they claimed that they were trying to figure out in all that amount of time, but that it didn't have to happen like that. You know what I mean? It did not have to happen like that. And I firmly believe, and I'm pretty sure many others believe, that if they reacted or responded quicker, like they got there, they responded, but they didn't do anything except harass the parents who wanted their babies. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that was very strange. Like, I don't understand why it happened like that. They've had several press conferences where they've even admitted to, being negligent to a degree, but nobody has given a like clear explanation as to why they stood around like that. To what we were trying to assess. It was like, what is there to assess? There's a guy in there shooting kids.
Right. I mean, well, to play a little devil's advocate to your point, I think one of the things that could be considered is it just one shooter? Are there multiple shooters? And maybe where they're located inside of the building, just to try to maybe limit the additional casualties that may have had to take place. Could have been something that they were thinking of. But again, I think the fact that they just haven't dropped it or released any type of statement as to what their reasonings may have been on, I understand they don't necessarily have to give us a whole breakdown as to their strategy, how they approach certain things, but anything that would make a little plausible sense as to why you felt the need to deny. And I think you brought up something else that was really interesting in my mind, and it kind of shows like this superior mindset that I think a lot of times people feel that officers have, especially within the inner cities when dealing with officers, where when the police were able to go in and some officers were able to go and remove their children from the safety of their, like that in itself, like if we just take a second to think about that, for you to go and pull out one child and look at maybe say what classes of normal sizes are, what 10, 15, 20 students in a class normally. So, for you to pull one child and leave 18 other ones there, you know what I'm saying, in danger, you feel me? And then have the gall to tell other parents who are willing to risk their lives for their children, just like you was just willing to do, you know, that they can't do the same. It's like, man, that's a tough pill to swallow. You know, I could see people getting arrested for even trying to get in there, because it's like, if you're gonna stop me, you're gonna have to physically stop me from trying to go get my child from up out of there. You know what I'm saying? Knowing it's a dangerous threat, and knowing how parents love their children. You know what I mean? So to know that you know, that was some of the things that were taking place is definitely wild to me, because it's like, you know, why is it okay for you to go, but it's not okay for you to get? And then even if you are going to go, why would you just only get yours? And I understand that you maybe can't get 20 children all out without, you know what I'm saying, it's going to be a bigger risk, but that's going to have to be the call that you're going to make if you're going to choose to go in there, because you know what I'm saying? Like, how can you go in with just take and extract one child from that dangerous situation? You know what I mean? And I don't know if they necessarily released the names of those officers or and those individuals. I don't think that they necessarily should be fired per se for that action, but because again, just like a regular parent would have wanted to go get their child, I don't think that their behavior was wrong in that regard, but I just think that it's kind of messed up to find out that it's okay for you to do it, but it's not okay for other parents to go in there. And then I was gonna leave it for Malik if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I have some pushback, but I wanted Malik to go first.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think it's wrong. Of course, I don't think you should just have parents is going in there. You want to have the authorities go in there and take that sense of urgency and go through the proper procedures, right? So there's been recent articles that are stating that the officers across the board, all the public safety officials that arrived on the scene, they didn't act within the proper procedures. So that is definitely a big issue right there, which leads to the gross negligence, right? They didn't even follow the proper procedures, because they have the duty to protect, right? In this case, and they didn't adequately do that, because the article by CNN is outlining the timeline of the shooting, and the Border Patrol agents, even when they arrived, they waited additional 40 minutes. And that was said to be enough time where they could have saved some lives if they acted quicker, right? So their delay in their response to actually pushing the classroom and going inside possibly costed some lives and led to some bleeding out of some children and stuff like that, some horrific things. So it's very telling, and it's a big issue that they're not following procedures when dangerous things like this happen. I don't know if it's trained. We got to find out were they properly trained, or maybe they're just they were scared, right? They're human too, because the article also discussed how some officers did go inside and a couple of them got grazed, right, around 11 something a.m. But the situation wasn't resolved until like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So when the shooter originally arrived there around 11:20 something in the morning. So that's a long time for those kids to be going through that experience when officers arrived in an adequate time frame. So that there's no excuse. We're going to kind of get into another subtopic, data police, but I know Sam wanted to.
Yeah, I have just a little bit of pushback. Like, I know, Everett, you were just playing devil's advocate, right? But there was one thing I wanted to make sure I put out there. There were over 81 Uvalde police that arrived on that scene. Over 81. There was one active shooter. So even if they're trying to assess the situation, it still shouldn't have taken over 40 minutes for them to even figure out whether or not to go in. And those Border Patrol agents that did go in, I believe those were the federal agents that I was referring to. And the reason why they went in, they didn't have proper training for that. They went in because it's like, why the hell are we still sitting here while these children are in there getting slaughtered? You know what I'm saying? And so I did want to make sure I mentioned that. And then with the police being scared, which kind of goes into the whole beta police thing. If I understand that policing is a dangerous job. And I'm not trying to knock that or take anything away from policing, but in not to try to compare the two travesties, right? Of, let's say, 9/11 and then this, right? 9/11, you saw police, firemen, all that stuff running towards danger to help people, to save people. It's part of their job. It's what they sign up for. And it's incredibly frustrating when you can hear children inside of a building screaming and being shot, and you're just standing there telling people, hey, if you want to go risk it, I don't want to go risk my life right now, and I'm not going to let you, even though you're willing to do it. There were parents that were getting ready to storm. There was a bunch of parents who were getting ready to storm that building with their own guns. And that was the reason at that point, that's when people started, going in there and saying, hey, we got to go do something before these parents come in, because there could potentially be more casualties. So I think that, I get it. I know you're just giving a little pushback for the sake of argument, E, but the thing of it is that I don't know too many excuses that make any sense. Like, they're excuses as opposed to valid reasons. Like, I can understand maybe if it took 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even that's a little long, right? But it would make sense if they're taking 10, 15 minutes to try to assess the situation and figure it out. It took an hour and a half to diffuse that situation. And that can never happen. That can never happen. That's not okay. And you're also talking about children. Like, the oldest kids in that school are around 10 years old. So it's really a travesty. And I think that there should be some people that should be held responsible, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, I think, Sam, one of the things that we just also wanted to mention in regards to a gross negligent neck down is, we just spoke in regards to a community sense, but I think sometimes we also talk about a more intimate sense of, parenting. I think this is a situation in which we've seen, that for whatever reasons, I don't know these people's backgrounds, I don't know necessarily their stories, but from an outside glance in, I feel as though that there's had to be a gross negligence, because most children don't grow up, based off of what I'm hearing, being bullied into shooting up schools. I think I saw with the comedian DC Young Fly posted a picture of the young lady who had to integrate into getting busted and integrating into desegregating the schools. That woman was being bullied by adults. She was being bullied by, people coming who had nothing to do. They had a lifestyle where they could come home and watch a young girl go to school and yell out, torture,
epithets, right?
Racial epithets, other type of negative things for her, trying to get an education. And I don't think that we ever heard of her growing up and doing anything grossly negligent to other individuals. Excuse me, not necessarily negligent, but like taking harm towards other individuals just based on their race. And so that's why, for me, it's kind of tough when we hear the mother say the statement, oh, he had his reasons, because it's like, well, what reasons do you have to take things out against people who aren't the cause of your problems, of your issues, and that lack of accountability kind of goes into maybe why he was in some of the situations that he may have been in. They may not have been able to take accountability. I don't want to get into speculating too much, but it would lead me to believe that if you believe that there's reasonings for something that heinous, you know what I'm saying, then it leads me to believe that you had to be part of that reasoning because you were so closely connected to that young man. And it shows a lack of accountability. I think when we look at the father and him in the statement that he made, which was something to the effect of, he shouldn't have killed all of those people. He should have just killed me. But I think it's messed up to say, but you might have been dead long before that moment to him because you weren't there. You may not have been actively, teaching him the things that he needs to know to understand that when people do talk about you, that's the time to kind of put your chest up. That's the time for you to look yourself up and say, you know what? I know I'm not what they say that I am. And then you prove it to yourself, and then it eventually shows to others. But if you sit there and he doesn't have anyone he can maybe turn to, or he doesn't have anyone teaching him self-confidence, he doesn't have anyone teaching him how to love himself, you know what I mean? Then he'll feel like, oh, the only way to respond to bullying is to be a bully. You know what I'm saying? And then be a bully to the weakest of individuals. I don't mean to call kids weak, but just the most vulnerable, rather, would be a better terminology for defining, you know, their positions in society, as opposed to an 18-year-old with a semi-automatic gun, you know? So that to me was another letdown in the negligences in the parenting situation. I'm sure the grandparents try to do the best that they could as well. You know, one of them says she got shot in the face, as you know, the grandmother, I believe, was shot in the face.
Yeah, she was shot and killed as well.
Yeah, and the grandfather said if he had known he had a gun, he would have turned him in.
You know, you feel me? So those things, and so it's tough. You know what I mean? It truly is tough. It's a true tragedy on all around the board. But I also feel like, you know, as well as the police, we need to look at holding the family accountable in that regards as well. And I'm wondering too, sometimes, I know, you know, he was 18 at this time though too, because, you know, I think as legalese, we all understand if a child takes some action that's really grossly bad, like, you know what I'm saying, a 16, 17-year-old, and we've seen that with the Kyle situation where they talked about possibly, you know, any charges against the parent, you know what I mean? Because again, someone should be held accountable for this action, and this child is technically your responsibility. And so I think that people should be mindful of those situations as well, because those are also ways in which accountability can be yielded against individuals who should take responsibility for the atrocities that their offspring has committed.
Yeah, I do want to say that, you know, family and community are very important, even in this situation, right? Possibly if there was a better family structure or community around, this could have prevented this, right? Because I say that because, you know, CNN had an article outlining the events where the shooter was talking to this girl who lived in Germany, and I guess that was like the woman he loved, and that was some of his outlet, right? And he was voicing a lot of that anger that he had towards his family and others with her. He was projecting that out. So anger is a big issue in this country. I think a lot of people are walking around angry because I feel like I think that, you know, a lot of people have been told and promised certain dreams, right? Like some of these white supremacists, we don't know enough information to know if he is a white supremacist or not. Some of these white supremacists are angry because they've been promised and told that, you know, they're superior, they're dominant, they deserve everything, they're entitled, and they're realizing there's other groups doing better than them. Asians are doing better. You see, you know, Blacks and other Hispanics and other groups having things, and you're like, you feel as though they don't deserve them because you're superior and you're the dominant race, right? So that's one issue that's at play. And I think another issue absent white supremacy, speaking that other people, right, they've been promised things as well, and they're realizing that it's not all, the promises aren't being fulfilled, right? You know, and also with this particular shooter, he was a little socially awkward, it seemed. You know, he had this girl who lived in Germany online. He's not really socially interactive, it seemed. He was active online, but not so much in the community. And I think that's very important these days, being active in your community, because even back in those days that you mentioned in the 60s, or during those civil rights situations, you know, Blacks had more of a community, right? So even though you were going through those struggles, you had those communities that could talk to you, give you, you know, unlicensed therapy, so to speak, about the situations. You had your churches where you can gather and you can talk about your issues, and you can let out some of your anger, and you have someone to console you about these situations. And I feel like today we don't necessarily have those communities across the board in most communities around the country. There are resources for therapy and stuff like that, but I think it starts with family and community first. And that's the first line of defense, right? Because sometimes people aren't going to just get the help themselves. That's why sometimes the help has to just be around you in your face, right? Because when it comes to therapy, you have to make that conscious decision to actually go to a therapist when you recognize you have a problem. But sometimes your anger is so suppressed where you don't even realize it until it just bursts out. And in the case of this shooter, it just burst out. His grandmother was talking on the phone about his bill, and I guess he felt like that was going to cut his connection off. This is just my opinion based off of what we know from the factual situation that CNN outlined, that his phone was going to get cut off, and he was going to lose contact with somebody he loved. He said he loved her, and that was some sort of escape from him. So he got upset and angry and shot his grandmother, and then proceeded to let out some more anger at an elementary school, which he outlined and told the girl that lived in Germany. Right. So I think, handling the anger situation amongst people, and especially amongst the males, because the males are more aggressive than the females typically, is very important. So I think we should definitely address the anger that a lot of people have in this country. So that's all I wanted to say.
I would say real fast I'm gonna just jump on that real fast and say I think sometimes we also have to look at a couple clues within that. When we refer to resources and things of that nature that maybe help with personality traits or feelings of emotions. I'm not very familiar with that area, but I believe it was like a rural area, if not, I know it wasn't like a metropolitan. And then
like a border town, little border town.
Yeah, okay. It's a small town, and it's predominantly Hispanic. So I was just gonna say, let me let you finish.
So yeah, I also wonder too, when you speak about, maybe having professional help seeking, like psychologists or something like that, or psychiatrists. I think like you have to also look at some of the context clues. Did this family grow up with, the benefit of having healthcare and things of that nature, to know what resources that they have available to them? Was that something that they would have been aware of to even know that they can offer that to? Some of those things kind of come with, unfortunately, with being educated and having a certain level of lifestyle that allows you to understand other benefits that you have. And unfortunately, having healthcare is something that comes for a certain class of individuals. Having the understanding of knowing what, a psychologist is or what they do also comes into play when you have to know a little bit more about what things are in society. So if you come from an area that maybe not, that's not really abreast to those type of things, and maybe don't really have as many doctors or resources in that neighborhood, that may be something that's a little bit limited. But I know in today's society where we have the internet and things of that nature, if you could find a young lady to speak to in Germany, I'm quite sure you could find someone else to help you through your problems as well online. So I guess it shouldn't be as big of a problem, but I do think that, some of those things may play into that role, because again, if you're growing up with a family that doesn't have healthcare, that's never had those type of resources, then they may not know how to even direct you towards the help that you need.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as the resources are concerned, yeah, you do need some kind of money or something to go get some healthcare so that you can see a therapist, right? A licensed therapist. But you don't need that to go talk to a priest or a pastor or something like that. If you had somebody in your community, family, that you could go to, like he was calling his sister and he was asking his sister to buy a gun. Why couldn't he ask his sister about, and the sister said no. Why couldn't he ask his sister for advice as to how to deal with some of the things that he had going on? You know what I mean? It's like, that's not the proper way to handle it. And, we don't know what was going on in that kid's head. We have absolutely no idea why he chose to go shoot up a school. He did have a community though. I mean, aside from the community there, he was on the internet talking about the things that he wanted to do. And there was even people that were like, "Are you going to shoot up a school?" And he was like, "Oh, something like, oh, watch your mouth," or whatever he said. I don't really remember. And then went ahead and did that very thing. Or, "You must think I'm crazy," and then turned around and went and did it anyway. So, I do think, family and community absolutely matters. There was one parent that tried to storm the school. I wanted to make sure I mentioned this. And she was handcuffed for trying to storm the school. And then the police released her from her handcuffs. She walked away calmly, went around to the back, snuck in, and got two kids out of the school. I think they may have been her children. I'm not sure if they were anybody else's, but it's like that standard may be different for a parent than it would be for police, right? Something that you were saying earlier, as far as those police going in there and taking out their kids. I mean, you would expect that a police officer would try to save more than just their own children, one or two kids in a room full, because that guy, the shooter, he went into two classrooms, if I'm not mistaken. And so with that being said, like I kind of want to transition a little bit. I know Malik wanted to make a point about beta police, and before we transition into the next subtopic.
Oh yeah, I was gonna make the point of beta police. It kind of ties into, it'll kind of segue perfectly into police discretion, what we're going to talk about next. But yeah, beta police is the fact that basically police nowadays, and I guess always has been the case, they tend to be more aggressive when the deck is stacked against them, when the suspect is unarmed, right? And the suspect is not of a certain race, right? So they tend to be more passive. They tend to delay on the situation. But when the suspect is of a different race, specifically a Black person, they're pretty aggressive. But that Black person also has to be unarmed, because we've come to notice when a Black person is armed, and okay, sorry, I froze up a little bit. When a Black person is armed, they delay and they hesitant, right? Because the deck isn't stacked against them. So it seems like when the police have some sort of situation that isn't in their favor, when they do have to act and protect the public safety, they seem to delay a lot, and it seems to take them a lot of time from a procedural standpoint, as well as just literally, hey, you need to act now. They just tend to delay. We've seen a pattern of this, and that's why I wanted to term them beta police. There's a lot of beta police officers in uniform that are just using their authority and superiority and their positions of power, not superiority, excuse me, their positions of power to actually, essentially bully a lot of people, especially minority groups, and just control situations. But when they're supposed to act and protect the public safety, that's when they want to neglect that power, right? They want to be more passive, right? They don't want to be an alpha in that situation. They want to be more of a beta, right? They don't want to take the lead. They want to follow all the rules to the book, right? But when they're supposed to be more passive, they don't want to do that. So I say all that to say that these police know what they're doing, most of them, and they seem to know when to act and when not to act aggressive. So and they're not. My last point here is they're not willing to, actually put their life on the line like they say they are, like their job description is, right? That's not very alpha of them. It's really beta. Like, hey, that's your job. I mean, there's other people's lives on the line, and you signed up for this. If you're not ready, you should choose another profession. I mean, that's just what it is. You know what you signed up for. So go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, E.
All right. Well, I was gonna say, I think a couple of things as to what you said. Like, I think for a lot of reasons, there aren't as hesitant to move in situations where it deals with people of color because I think that they don't really fear the consequences of their actions in those situations. I think that a lot of times people make those moves and kind of go, and they realize that, for whatever reasons, I think until lately, when we started to see people start to be held accountable for the lives taken, as far as with George Floyd. And I don't think that it also means that this is stopped or has been a definitive, but it was at least a moment in which everyone had to watch. And then we seen an officer, as well as the lady in Texas who had to go get locked up, start to see, okay, guys, this blue valve, can be pierced in regards of if you are negligently taking a life. But on a day-to-day basis, I don't really feel like a lot of people feel like that's the case. And that's why they're being as willing and as freely to be a little more aggressive in those type of situations that are really called for it. I think you can go back to referencing one of the things that I reference is in the same type of situation, not necessarily the same situation, but giving reference to this topic in which we're talking about was the young man who, again, got roughed up for stealing a bag of chips from a store. Now you gonna roughhouse him, you doing all of this, that, and the third to a little boy who just stole some chips, but you're gonna wait outside on a real gunman. You feel me? Where a real present threat is present, and it's those type of interactions that go on and around the country that leads a lot of individuals to feel as though, a lot of individuals of color to feel as though, that's the beta type of activity. That's a beta type of mindset. If your energy isn't as aggressive and as strong in tone as it is in those situations, then don't say me that when you have, a shooter. Don't bring, if you see guys shooting up buildings and doing this, that, and the third, but you shooting and killing people, eating ice cream, reaching for Bibles, reaching for a wallet, all other types of situations that may have occurred, then keep that same energy when you see it's a real gunman that's really out here taking lives. I understand that ideally it's supposed to go before the jury and the jury is supposed to make a decision, or if they have a jury case. But I feel as though a lot of times we don't get that luxury. You know what I'm saying? We don't get that luxury of being able to see our peers, their mindset and the decisions that they feel like they need to take is to take us out in that moment. And I think that's the reason why we say, it looks beta. It looks like you picking and choosing. It looks like you scary. It's like, I'll even go as far as to say, it's like a guy who put their hands on women only. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't put your hands on a man, but you're going to only strike a woman. And I'm not saying that to say that, people of minorities are considered to be women in that situation. I'm just simply saying that if you're going to take precautions in how you approach some situations, take those same type of precautions in every situation. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, don't do it because you feel like you can get off. And I'm assuming you scared that if you was to shoot Kyle Rittenhouse or you was to shoot such and such, that you were going to get held in the more hot seats. The guy that shot up the church, or the gentleman who shot up more recently the grocery store. So that's all I really wanted to kind of say on that beta situation.
Yeah, you said a lot of what I had to say. The only thing I really wanted to add was, you got to remember something. A lot of those police officers out there in Uvalde, Texas, were Hispanic. It's a Hispanic community. A lot of the police that were there were Hispanic, just like the children, the school. It was a Hispanic community, and so it's
true.
Very troubling. At least when you're looking at a situation where, for example, what happened out there in Buffalo at the grocery store, where you had a white shooter who was picking Black people to kill because they were Black, right? Here you have a Hispanic boy going into a Hispanic school, shooting up the Hispanic students and the Hispanic teacher, and the Hispanic police show up and don't do anything. And so it's like, why not? And fear is the biggest thing. Like I was saying earlier, it's a scary job. It's a tough job. And nobody on this panel, nobody on this podcast is trying to say that, oh yeah, the job is so easy, just do it. And it's like, no, but it is what you signed up for, right? It's what you signed up for. you knew what you were getting into. You knew that this is it's always a possibility when you are a police officer that you are going to have to run into harm's way, period. Full stop. There's nothing else to add to that. There's always, there's a great higher possibility.
Before you're finished.
Yeah, there's a much,
sure.
There's a much higher possibility that you're gonna have to run into the lines of danger in order to help and save people, you know. And so that's the reason why you have the training that you get, you know, so that you can make sure that you appropriately approach a situation, not so that you can sit around outside with your hands on in your pockets, cussing out parents who want to make sure their babies are safe, or to make sure that the children are out of harm's way. And so, you know, I think the level of aggression that those police officers showed towards the parents was telling, as it relates to being a beta police officer, right? And the reason why I say that is because you're not even attacking the person that's created the circumstance. You're attacking innocent people. Like, you see parents getting tackled, pepper sprayed, arrested, all that time. Oh, you're interfering. We're interfering because it's taking you an exuberant amount of time to go in there and help save children. It's not like we're asking you to friggin', you know, walk on a balance beam. Children are being shot and we can hear it right now outside. What's going on? You're putting me in handcuffs and a baby is getting shot. Like, come on, y'all gotta do better. I don't know what the heck was going on in their minds. I'm not gonna sit here and project. I'm not even gonna sit here and try to, you know, friend of mine, he always calls it Monday morning quarterbacking. It's just clear that they were supposed to act and they chose not to, period. And I don't know why, and it's not okay. That was what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's imperative that, you know, these police officers during their training, that they understand and that there's a strong emphasis in, you know, the leadership and the management of the department or who's in charge of training, that these officers know that in this line of work, in this line of duty, that you may have to sacrifice yourself for something greater. I think they need to hit that home and emphasize that, because you can't just be delaying when there's children on the line. I mean, it shouldn't take you over an hour to figure out if it's a hostage situation and whether you need to call negotiators or not. Given some of the facts that are coming out, they clearly didn't follow proper procedures and protocols, and I think it needs to be emphasized strongly, given the fact that we've had a lot of mass shootings over the past 20 years. So we need to get that corrected so people, so we can save lives, right? And also it kind of leads back to family community, where we need to build better families to build better men, right? So we can have better men making these better decisions, because I think that's what it comes down to. But I kind of want to segue into our next little topic. We'll kind of be brief because we kind of already kind of talked about it a little bit, about police discretion, right? So police, they are able to exercise discretion when it comes to a lot of these white mass shooters, a lot of white people when they're doing misconducts, or even other groups. Well, when it comes to our people, specifically Black Americans here in the United States, Americans descendants of slaves here, they're aggressive, right? They over police, right? They're fully armed, they're ready, and everything. Exactly. Does anybody else want to say anything about police discretion?
I mean, they had discretion and they chose not to act, period. That's it. There's not really much else to say about that. And it cost lives of many, many children.
No, but I did want to follow up with one of the things that you were talking about earlier when you mentioned like about some of the training, and I heard that, you know, the president recently just suggested a solution of having the doing like a executive order to have, you know, more police training for certain situations. And I think that that was interesting to see, you know, his approach towards this situation. I know another thing that I've been hearing going around was the previous president, Trump, has stated that he suggested that there should be, you know, one entryways for schools, like one door that's an entryway in and out to get access into the schools. I know.
Yeah, he said that, yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard a couple of people kind of make reference to that, and I wonder about that just simply because, you know, of the
He's been complaining about fire hazards with that.
yeah, like, you know what I'm saying, the hazards that come with like having fire hydrant, and you have to get all students from all levels of where, if it's a multi-level school or not, out of that one.
Joe Clark get in trouble for chaining the doors.
Absolutely.
Well, I would say two.
You know,
and
I also wonder too, like maybe they could try to see about either, if not, you know, when I started thinking about the situation, if not, you know, one, having police have access to doors for the school. So even if you do have the doors locked, you know, there's a police officer there. If not, having certain
like a master key kind of thing.
Yeah, like a master key that they can go into all schools and get into unlock all doors. If you don't have maybe a utility officer at all locations, maybe somebody close by that can always have a key. So in the case of emergency, they can unlock that door closest to their classroom, whatever it is. If it's the teacher,
like a code, like a code to access.
Well, I was thinking something like that too. I know this might be a lot more challenging though, but just to have like electronic locks, you know what I'm saying? Something that they can just kind of, you know, you hit a click of a button and it unlocks doors. So that could be something, you know, that may be possible to being done to maybe allow for doors to be locked during the daytime, but in a case of an emergency, a quick tap, and now, you know what I'm saying, the doors can be open in case they need to get a rush to get students out of there in some situations. I know, again, a lot of people are saying that's the problem, that the doors are open, right? You know what I mean? But in certain situations, I think that it may be best that you be able to have students be able to exit quickly, you know, as opposed to necessarily having to be trying to get funneled out of one door per se. So those are things that I definitely think that could also maybe help with those situations. We also have been hearing situations as far as having more resource officers located in every school. And that we know probably will be an additional cost that will, you know, come upon a lot of the local communities to try to bear in order for that to take place. Or either having armed resource officers or private security officers rather on the location.
They have to be beta police though, right? Because remember, I think it was in Florida. I can't remember which school shooting it was. There was an officer, and he didn't even bother to go in.
Yeah. And I you know, so like those.
Yeah, I think they should be staffed inside patrolling the premises.
So yeah, those
or
are.
If it's outside, they have a route. But go ahead, D. Wrap up. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, those are just a couple of things that I thought of. You guys, I don't know if y'all have some more solutions or things.
I mean,
I have a solution, but Sam, you can go first because I want to share a few things.
There's a couple things. Like one of the things you mentioned was the president's response about training. Like, you can't fix stupid. I'm sorry. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to come off like that, but you can't. If officers are constantly being trained and they have the proper training and they opt to not use it, you can't train them into using it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, should there be better training in certain circumstances? Yes, as far as when you're talking about de-escalation, relationships with the community, things like that. Like, there definitely does need to be more training. Don't get me wrong, because police do not get enough training for the seriousness and the dangerousness of their job. They don't. And so is more police training probably, should it be required? Yes. Should they probably have longer time at the academy? Yes. Should there probably be, more education, higher educational requirements? Yes. Maybe they can get a stipend. Like, there's a whole lot of things that you can do on that aspect as you're relating to police, but you can't fix somebody's fear. If somebody doesn't want to do something, I don't care how much education you have or knowledge or training or whatever, if you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it. And I know that it's tough because you want to say, well, hire better police. I mean, that's easier said than done because a lot of people don't apply to be police. And with all the things that are going on with policing in this country, less people are applying to become police officers. So it has to be structured differently, whether it be maybe there's different consequences for not doing your job as a police officer, right? And also too, it's one of the reasons why people talk about gun control. Everybody knows guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? Everybody knows that. But I was on social media and Attorney Crump had posted something that came from Everytown for Gun Safety. And I found it to be incredibly interesting as far as some of the ways you can regulate guns, right? It's not necessarily just about, get rid of do an assault rifle ban and all that. I mean, that could definitely help because when Bill Clinton did it, it dropped, I think 48% of mass shootings dropped. I think I might have the numbers wrong, guys, but I want to say it was like 48%. But then when they let it expire, when the Republicans let it expire, it spiked like 400 and something percent, right? Mass shootings did. But so that obviously is a potential solution. But one of the other solutions as it relates to gun control itself that Attorney Crump posted was about what if guns were regulated more like cars, right? Cars can be dangerous, right, if they're not driven appropriately. So it's not a matter of whether or not the car is just dangerous just sitting there. It's about how it's used, right? Just like a gun. And so the things that they were suggesting is like, maybe you should get a title and a tag for each point of sale, right? Do some sort of gun training like you would for driving training, have a written test like you do to get your permit, right? Then take a practical test in order to get your permit. Get your license or be able to have a gun. Make health requirements because just know, there's a lot of people that may be sick that drive, but if you have like epilepsy and you could have a seizure at any time, or if you have a severe heart condition and you could have a heart attack at any time, they will not allow you to drive. Your license is like technically like on a health type of suspension. Maybe get liability insurance on each gun, right? If people were required to get insurance on a gun, you would see the sales of guns go down because people don't like buying insurance, right? Especially Black folks when you're talking about life insurance, but that's another conversation for a different day. And renewals and inspections at intervals, because somebody could be completely sane and completely, incompetent and all of that when they first purchase a gun, but things can happen. Somebody can get sick over time. Maybe their mental decline, maybe their mental health declines, things like that. And maybe they shouldn't be carrying a gun. You know what I'm saying? And so at that point, and so if they're required to continue to renew their licenses in order to have a gun, maybe that could help decrease things. There's no fix for these types of things, right? I know that our country also, one thing, I very, 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 very rarely ever agree with Donald Trump. But one of the things that Donald Trump said was that our country needs to have a better look at how we approach mental health in this country. And I agree with that statement because I think that if we approach mental health with more, seriousness, a lot of things, not even just, mass shootings and gun violence. There's a lot of crimes that potentially could decrease based on the way that we approach mental health. And money is not the answer for every problem. Although our country functions on money and they always want to throw money at a problem, throwing more money towards the police is not going to stop police. It's not going to make a police officer go do his job. It's not. Will you be able to potentially hire more police? Maybe you'll hire that one guy that'll go in and do his job. You know what I'm saying? But, also too, there has to be more money thrown towards the schools. You can't expect teachers to be the one. Those two teachers that died protecting those children in that school. And it's very sad because they shouldn't have. It wasn't their job to stand in the line of fire. That's not what they signed up for. They signed up to teach children. The police signed up to go into the line of danger and keep people safe. And is it, yes, the teachers are supposed to protect children to a certain degree, but that's not the job. And so I think that we really have to take a really holistic and realistic approach at the way that we look at these types of things.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with what you guys are both saying, and I think that our country needs to do better in terms of the resource aspect, which it definitely can, right? So that's one thing that this country can do overnight, expedited. I think it's a bipartisan thing that it could be pushed through immediately, right? Something that should be pushed through immediately, because I want to share my screen here to show you guys some of these facts, and you guys can be the judge of this. 1 second here. I want to show you guys my screen here. So can y'all all see my screen? Just give me a confirmation here. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so this is the spending, right? So the United States spends $586.4 billion on education. This is federal, state, and local combined, $584.9 billion. But the federal government, this is how much the federal government spends. They spend $40.83 billion. So just a little over $1,000 per kid. And you know what they recently did? They did this. They sent over that whole amount of spending that they spend annually for our children's education to Ukraine, basically, right? They sent 40 billion over to Ukraine. So we could have just took some of that money, right? We could have just took some of that money, some of those resources, and put it into the school system for protection, for security, for training, to fortify our schools better, to prevent mass shootings at schools, right? That's something that the United States could do to help with the problem. It may not solve it, it may not fix it, but it can improve the situations. And something like this could have possibly prevented if there was some armed officers on the premises. And we could do that for every school. And Donald Trump made a good point. Like we can have, we have the resources to put a armed guard at every school, a resource officer, right? And there's no excuse. If we could send money to Ukraine to help out with their situations, to saying, hey, they need help over there in Ukraine, right? So it's fine to give them aid, but what about home? We gotta take care of home first. You can't help others when your homes are in shambles, right? And our home is in shambles right now. So I think y'all could be the judge on that and see, hey, you see what's going on here? They're able to, produce this money and send it out to help other countries and help other people, but we're not helping our own family, our own children. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Ever, you got anything else, or I'll move on to the.
No, I was gonna go real quick with a couple of things real fast as my motivational minute, real quick. In particular, one of the things that we said, and talking about resources and things of that nature, and comedian Chris Rock had once addressed this by saying gun control, that, instead we need bullet control, and that if, every bullet costs $5,000, you wouldn't have innocent bystanders. And I think, that's definitely an approach to it. And you guys referenced that earlier as far as limiting ammunition that people are able to get. Another quote that I found was by an Amanda Gorman, which stated that it takes a monster to kill children, but to watch monsters kill children again and again and do nothing is just insanity. It isn't. It is inhumanity. And I think that was a real telling situation as to how we feel about maybe some of the steps that Congress, the lacks of action rather from Congress as well. And I mean, maybe that's someone that we could also put in the gross negligence category in regards to not taking definitive acts to prevent these horrific things from taking place. And this is something that's kind of been going on in the last, 10, 20 years, that we've been seeing an uptick in these mass murders. So those were a couple little quotes that I kind of just wanted to put on you guys' minds, just in regards to, you know, gun safety and gun control, and ask that again, that we just do better. You know what I'm saying? We do better as a whole, because again, this situation didn't start with him just getting a gun and getting access to it. It started long before it. And so, you know, we need to be able to try to get to people a lot earlier than when after the tragedy strikes. So that's all I wanted to say.
Right, I concur. I want to get us into the Black Business of the Month, which is powernomics.com. It's a website by Dr. Claude Anderson. He also has this think tank, the Harvest Institute. Y'all guys can donate to that as well. And the book of the month is Powernomics, right? It's an empowerment economic plan for a national plan, excuse me, not economic plan, it's national plan for Black people. I think it's very important read. It even discuss some of these issues in terms of like protection, and it starts with the community. So I think it's very important for us to read and understand this and apply it to our lives as Black people, American descendants of slaves in this country. So once again, powernomics.com. He has the library pack you can get for $99. You can get a lot of his books. So make sure you check him out.
Absolutely. So guys, we wanted to make sure that we thank everybody for tuning into our podcast today. Our socials are going to be placed at the end of this podcast. Make sure you go ahead and you check out Powernomics, like Malik was just talking about, and be good to each other, be kind to each other, and pay attention. You know, we gotta do better, and as not just as individuals, but as a community, as a group. And so collectively, I guess is the better word. And so, you know, we want to just make sure we said thank you guys for tuning in. We wanted to offer our condolences to the families of the children lost out there in Uvalde. There have been so many mass shootings, and so we would be remiss if we did not offer our condolences to also the people out there in Buffalo, the Asian families out there in the church that got shot. I think that was in California. Like all these mass shootings that have happened, we definitely want to offer our condolences to the families of those who were lost. And, you know, we just hope that we figure something out soon, because this is not going well. And so things have to get better. So again, thanks for tapping in. We love y'all, and we will see y'all on Wednesday for What's Up Wednesday. And again, next week. Remember, What's Up Wednesdays at 8:30 on Instagram. So other than that, peace.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. Peace.
Appreciate it.